Hello everyone, welcome to the e-marketing session 5, and we are covering chapter 6, which is e-marketing research. You'll notice that we have skipped chapter 5. We will be covering that later on because that's an area which I prefer to talk about at the end, that is the ethics in e-marketing. As far as e-marketing research, as you all know, some of you might have taken marketing research class. Research is gathering information for the purpose of planning or for the purpose of refining your fine-tuning your marketing mix. So in this case, the idea is that we like to gather information and then to see how that information could be converted into marketing knowledge. So let's see what are the objectives of this chapter. You should be able to identify the three main courses of data that e-marketers use to address research problems, discuss how and why e-marketers need to check the quality of research data gathered online, explain why the internet is used as a contact method for primary research, and describe the main internet-based approaches to primary research. Then contrast and compare the client side, server side, and the real space approaches to data collection. And finally, we will highlight 4 important methods of analysis that e-marketers can apply to data warehouse information. So some of the technical terminologies will be defined, and also we'll see how marketers are using this internet as an excellent source to gather information so that they can offer products and services to their customers. So first of all, we all know that organizations are literally drowning in data. There's so much data available out there, and it is very difficult for managers to see whether the data which is available is the right data, accurate data, or the relevant data. When we talk about the marketing insight, it occurs somewhere in between the information and knowledge, and I'll show you the diagram later on. But let's first talk a little bit about the case study at the beginning of the chapter. This is on page 144. Later on, I'd like you also to read that, but let me just summarize that. That's called the Purina story. Some of you probably know Purina is a pet food, and this company was purchased by Nestle in 2001, and they have a full line of products, very big brand of both dog and cat care foods, and it includes the Friskies, the Alpo, the Purina Dog Chow, and Fancy Feast. So the firm manages more than 30 branded websites. They target veterinarians, veterinary schools, nutritionists, food scientists, breeders, etc. So when Nestle bought this company, they were interested to have information about 3 research questions. What were the questions? The first one was they wanted to know whether the buyers are using the branded websites or not. Secondly, they wanted to see if we invest beyond the branded website for an online advertising as well, because this is a product and there was an opportunity for them. We have the e-marketing, so the question was, should we be advertising online or not? And then finally, uh, if we decide to place online ads, where to place those online ads. So this was not an easy task for them because they had to sort out hundreds and millions of pieces of data from about 20.5 million consumers to make decisions. So in this case, of course, they went through some data and then did some research to gather some data, and they three types of exposures were done for the banner ad which they wanted to put online to see whether if it does make a difference to advertise online first of all, or if you advertise it at a low exposure, which means a less compared to more. And they got some very interesting findings. They found out firstly that clicks on the banner was very low. In other words, people would not click. They would, if they are on the website and they see the ad of Purina, very few of them would click on on this to find more information about the Purina, uh, even though the ad was attractive and everything. However, the second finding was that when the study participants were asked what they thought of the dog food, for example, after they were exposed to the ads, the those who were exposed to these online banner ads, they they responded 31% more than those who did not see the ad. So compared to the control, they were able to see that 31% of the people who saw the banner ads, they preferred that brand, or they answered that we would like to buy that brand. So the awareness of that brand was 31% more on those who were exposed to the ad compared to those who were not exposed to the ads. Then also the third finding, which was even more interesting, was that they those who were exposed to the ad much more, in other words, 6 to 20 exposures compared to 1 to 5 exposures, those people who were exposed highly, they were even 7% more compared to those who were low exposure. That also showed that if you keep on showing the banner ad, if it's done frequently, the brand awareness could go up. Okay, so these were interesting findings because they were then able to decide that yes, we can place the banner ads. But of course, the next question was where to place those banner ads, and they of course checked some of the frequently visited websites like PetSmart.com and About.com, and their users were mostly over there. So that was one of the reasons why they probably decided to place the ad in there. But now if we link this with the next slide, which is that once you got the data, you need to make a decision. So let's go down. First of all, you need to understand this triangle. This is an important triangle. On the net, we gather the data about our customer, and that's just the data. Once you have a frequency of data, you have enough data to call it information. And then the next phase is when from that information you gain some knowledge. And once you gain the knowledge, you are able to then make some decisions. Okay. This is part of the MIS, or Marketing Information System, in which the evolution the goes upwards like this, from data to information to knowledge and then decision making. So let's take an example and see over here. In this case, for example, it shows this scanning, or the scan number of the product, and it just says buyer 1 bought Purina Puppy Chow on March 1. This is just the data, and there could be in a store database, there could be thousands of such databases, right, that people are buying the can. Now, based on that, they would then gather some information, and here's some of that information. Purina buyers are 20% more likely to visit about.com. This is a website about.com, and their information shows that the people who were buying this were visiting this website, 20% of them. And then it also shows that 36% of the dog owners who see Purina ads would buy the brand, as I mentioned to you in the previous slide. Now, this was a good information. Both of that is a good information. Based on that, then they moved upwards to the knowledge. And the knowledge they have gained is that the dog owners who see the ads online are likely to buy Purina One. In other words, when we show the banner ad for Purina to these owner of these dog owners and who are visiting the website, they're likely to buy the product. We know the sites they visit. The sites are about.com and the petsmart.com. So based on that knowledge now, you can make a decision. So in this case, they're saying, let's put banner ads on about.com because they're seeing that it's likely that the people who are visiting about.com, they're going to see the Purina ad, and the chances of them purchasing the Purina product goes up. This is how we move along from data to decision making. Okay. Lots of companies are using this data this way, and it is very important information. And as we learn later on, that how the data could be used for decision making by the marketeers. So knowledge management is a process of managing the creation, use, and dissemination of the knowledge. Okay. When we talk about knowledge management, there, as you see over here, we have this knowledge. In this case, the companies, when they have lots and lots of this information, they gain some knowledge, and based on that knowledge, then they move along to the decision making though. Some examples of knowledge management can be found in the book also, whereby you have companies which are using the knowledge to uh, gain, to learn more about their customer. And if you look at that, sorry, going back to the exhibit 6.4, which is on page 149, you will see that how customers' databases are used, and in their customer database, when they are able to then refine their offerings. So for example, one example they're giving is that in the database, it showed that about 21% of the customers complained about not finding a switch on a certain product. So once you have it in your database, you can use that database and see that if there are this much percentage of the people who can't find the switch on their board, then the best thing to do is to redesign the computer switch. So you send it to the design department in order to make changes. And this is how you're going to be making changes in the products which are being offered. So you learn a lot from this knowledge which you have. The marketing information system, the definition of that is marketers manage knowledge through a marketing information system in which many firms store data in databases and the data warehouses. Data warehouse, think of it like a warehouse, except that instead of products, it has got the data in there. So these are huge servers which have got plenty of data. And we'll learn later on that how to use that data which is gathered there. So as an example, when we go to the retail stores, uh, in the stores they have the scanners where they scan the products at the retail outlet, and that data is going somewhere. That data is stored in the data warehouse. Now, Each day, hundreds and thousands of transactions are made by these big retail stores, and this data goes into the data warehouse. Now, within this data could be utilized later on, and as I'll explain that to you later on. The internet and other technologies have actually facilitated the data collection. This has actually been a very good lesson for the marketeers, that internet can capture the data and it facilitates the data collection. And marketers are interested in the data because that helps them, as I said before, help them fine tune the offering, provide better customer service, and then maybe even improve the products. So the secondary data provides information about competitors, consumers, and the economic environment. The, I do hope that you know the difference between primary and secondary data. The secondary data is the one which is collected for some other reason other than your research problem. And the primary data is when you are gathering data, fresh data, for the purpose of solving your research problem. Marketers use the net and the other technologies to collect the primary data about the consumers. So then what are the sources of the data? We have plenty of sources in the data, of the data. For example, as you said, accounting, finance, production, marketing, collect the data, and it's sitting out there so you can analyze that data, which could be called non-marketing data like accounting, finance, but also you have the data such as sales and advertising, spending, etc. too. And then you have the Salesforce data, which means that, for example, the Salesforce data will show how many customers do we have, what kind of level of purchasing they're doing, how can we classify them, how often do they buy, and then who are the loyal customers and who are the new customers. All of this information is very, very useful for the marketeers. This is all already available. This is internal data and it's the secondary data. We also may have the customer characteristics and behavioral data too. For example, from the UPC, we are able to get from the universal codes the customers who may be buying more often than the others. So, for example, if a store like Home Plus has got a loyalty card, based on that loyalty card, the customers will go and, anytime they make a purchase, they are going to ask them to swipe that card. Once they swipe that card, actually it is a very useful information for the company, for Home Plus. Although it is useful for the customer also, because the customer might be gathering some points or some incentives later on to get some things, but it is also useful for the companies more so than the customer. And how is it useful? In so many ways. For example, these codes could help the, the company understand what kind of products this customer is buying more often than the others. Same way, these codes can help them see which in which area if this person is living and what kind of products he or she is buying more often. So you can analyze the data based on various stores location and see what kind of people are buying what types of products in what areas. It helps the marketeers to see which area or which place they should be putting or marketing products more often than the other areas. Tracking of the user movement through the web pages is also consumer behavior. So for example, we see that one of the area in which data is gathered about the consumer behavior is through their web pages. So for example, I can give you my own example that uh, a couple of months ago, I was going through the web pages, trying to browse some marketing courses because somebody had asked me that they need to know whether what kind of marketing courses are offered out there and if I can help them. So I was browsing and then I selected some of them. But then after a couple of weeks or so, I started getting banner ads or email information about some marketing courses or some ads next to my emails, like in Google or in Hotmail. I started getting that. Now, this is not by accident. This is all based on my consumer behavior. The computer was gathering the data on my behavior as far as what kind of websites I was visiting. And then based on that, if it started offering me products which the computer felt that I might be interested in. Sometimes it's very useful as well. So the secondary data, as we said, is a data which is already available out there and which was gathered for purpose other than the current market research problem. It's There are some advantages to the secondary data. One is it can be collected more quickly and easily and less expensive than the primary data because it's already out there, especially in the case of internet. You just need to go through that, find the right place, and you'll be able to get lots and lots of data out there. Secondary data may not meet the marketer's information needs. So sometimes you may be able to see lots and lots of data, but it may not be able to answer your market research problem. So for the reason as follows. One, the data were not gathered for the same purpose which you are looking for. So they were gathered for different purpose. The quality of this secondary data may be unknown, or the data maybe is very old. Okay. To give you an example, uh, once I was trying to write a report on the real estate market of Dubai, and I started to gather some data from the statistics of the people living in Dubai, and the government data which was available, which was secondary data, which was about 4 or 5 years old. Now, within those 5 years, a lot had happened in the real estate market because there was a boom in the market and so many changes in the market. So obviously that data which was 4 or 5 years old was too old for me. I could not use that data because that secondary data was not current and lots of changes had happened in that market. So of course in that case then I had to go back and gather some primary data. Marketers continually gather business intelligence by scanning the microenvironment. When we talk about business intelligence, basically whenever we use the word intelligence, what it means is basically we are trying to gather the data about our competitors. It is an important information because it helps us also to then fine tune our products. If the competitor, for example, are offering products or if they are using some unique ways by which they are satisfying the customer needs, then we need to also do that. So it is important to gather this data, which is part of the competitor intelligence. Uh, if you look at on page 152, you will see some competitive intelligence data. In this case, they're saying that how it should be done, and it says number one, you do define the intelligence requirement, which means that what kind of competitor information which you require. Now remember, we are talking about ethical means, not unethical. Ethical means of gathering data about the competitors. So collect and organize information, analyze by applying the information to the specific purpose, report and inform others of the finding, and then evaluate the impact of intelligence use and suggest the improvement in there too. Okay. So going back to the secondary data, if you go on page 152, we have example of the data, which is, um, I'm sorry, it's page 150. You will look at secondary data, which is on page 150, and this is on the US Census Bureau. This is about people living in various areas, the household, the business and industry, etc., etc. Now, this is secondary data is useful. As I gave you the example of the real estate, same way it could be used. That if you want to know what type of demographics are in certain area, what is the income level, what is the age groups in that area, because once you get that information, then you can it will help you a lot in your e-marketing plan. So as we said, when you are preparing a marketing plan, you will be doing the scanning of the macro environment, as we discussed that in the last two chapters, that you need to gather the information about the macro environment, and the business intelligence will help you a lot too. You could also gather data from various public and private data sources. This is also part of the secondary data. And there are two types: public generated data and private generated data. Okay? So we can, uh, for example, the internet connections here in Korea, as well as the economic department area, they could be gathered. I'm giving here a couple of examples on what we gathered in Dubai also. Dubai Economic Department gave some publicly generated data, and that could include, for example, the people who are visiting their website, giving information about them, the industry profession, and the specific information about some various industries. Then we have privately generated data. This is a privately generated data because uh, various large research firms can gather this data, and this is called the syndicated data as well. One example is the Forrester Research, which keeps on gathering information about the consumer behavior online. And then Nielsen also has got what is called the Nielsen rating. This is similar to what they have the rating for the TV stations, and they can also rate according as well. Also, we have online databases, and these are basically also the um, various syndicated databases based on the industry. Various industries databases are available. Let me give you some example of the public online data sources on page 152. You can have World Trade Organization data, IMF, then also for the specific industry you can have academic articles on some of the websites. Similarly, you can have the Small Business Administration data available. So this is publicly online held data. And the second one, which is the privately generated data, as I explained to you, which is some examples are on page 153. This gives you a good idea about where to get some information. Some of that is paid information, and it's even though privately generated, bits and pieces of information might be available free of charges for you too online. Now, in some cases, when you are not able to get the answer for your market research problem through the secondary data, then you move towards the primary data. In which case, as we said, you need to gather the data yourself because the information is not available out there. So you need to collect the fresh data. two electronic sources of primary data collection are available. One is through internet and the other one is the real space. Okay. Obviously, we use these internet in order to gather the data. Here is some example. Primary data collection on the net. Now, the primary data it could be experiments. You could be doing experiments online. It could be focus group. In other words, compared to the face-to-face focus group, which is offline, the online focus group has got some advantages and some disadvantages also. If you recall in your marketing research, you might have learned that a focus group is when you have 8 to 10 people from a certain similar group. You gather them in the room, you ask them some questions about certain products. This is your target audience. You're trying to find some information. So this could be done online also. There are advantages to that. One is that you could save time. You could say it could be less costly, and also people who are not able to come to find time to come to visit your focus group face to face can also be present online. And mostly, so as an example, if you have a focus group on some kind of medicine or pharmaceutical product, and you need some doctors to come for the focus group, they may not have time. They might be too busy to come to your focus group. So in that case, it may not be as useful face to face. So online, they may find time. And of course, the other advantage to that is that since you are doing focus group online, people could be anywhere in the world. So in this case, in the example I gave you, the doctors could be in any part of the world where they could be giving information, and that could be a very powerful information. Of course, it's got some disadvantages as well. One of the disadvantages of focus group is that you may not know who is on the other side on the net trying to respond to your question. So for example, if your product which you are trying to gather information requires that maybe your target audience should be about maybe 40 years of age or above, and then you conduct some online focus group, you may not be able to confirm whether the person answering your questions is really above 40 or not. So that could be a disadvantage of the focus groups. However, they are gaining popularity. In-depth interviews. Now, these are interviews, of course, in comparison to face-to-face interviews. These in-depth interviews online are also important. Once again, it saves time uh, because of the internet. They may not be there at that time present. You could ask them questions, and then later on they can answer those questions and give you that data either by email, telephone, or website, etc. So there are various ways by which you can do that. There are primary research steps which needs to be taken, and I'd like you to open the book on page 156 to get some idea as to how the primary research would be actually done. And you will see that it's not very much different than the regular marketing research. So first of all, you have a prime research problem, just like prior secondary data. You'll also have this kind of research problem, and then which shows um, some problem you need to solve. Here are some typical problems on Exhibit 611 on page 157. So one of your problem could be test new products, or maybe test co-branding and partnership effectiveness. The other kind of problem could be to measure the display ad click-through, whether it's done or not. Site visit overall satisfaction, is it efficient or not? These are the kind of research problems which you may want to solve them, and you come up with then a research plan. So again, on page 156, you see the research plan. Firstly, it's got the research approach. On the basis of the information needed, researchers choose from among experiments. It could be focus group, as I mentioned before, or observation techniques, or survey research, or some kind of non-traditional web monitoring techniques. The sample design. At this stage, the researcher selects the sample source and the number of desired respondent. So these are your potential target audience who you want to use for the purpose of gathering the data. Contact method. The way to contact the sample includes the traditional method such as telephone or the mail, or in the case of internet, of course, there are ways you can send them a link to the website. Instrument design. If a survey is planned, researcher develops a questionnaire. For other methods, research develop a protocol to guide the data collection. Then you want to add the data or collect the data. In this case, researchers gather information according to the plan and then analyze the data using the software. And finally, the distribution and the findings based on based on the request of your client, or maybe within the company your management might be looking for the findings. So this might be placed in the marketing knowledge database and then presented in written or in oral form to your managers. So this is why, as you can see, it's not very much different than the regular gathering of the data, but specifically online, this primary data is collected. Some of the tools which are used for the primary research are, as you can see, online survey. They are the one used most often. This is a very good tool because it has got lots of advantages. One of the advantage of online survey is that it's instant. People who go on the web, put in the data, complete their survey. Once they complete the survey, then you'll get the analysis too. So it's got the advantages. It avoids the errors also, which happens in the case of keying in the data. So it is useful, and it is picking up. Uh, this is becoming very popular. You might have used this tool for filling out some of the survey. A good example is SurveyMonkey, and then Qualtrics is another one, which is online surveys. So as you can see, about close to 90% of the time, online surveys are used. Email surveys could be used. In this case, you send the email with the survey and then ask them to complete that. Online focus groups is another one, again depending on the product. Bulletin board focus groups, and then the website use measures are also part of the primary research. Some of the internet-based approaches, they include the uh, customer satisfaction, the creative test, the product development, for example, or the reputation management. These are some of the areas which are useful in gathering this kind of primary data. Now, in some cases, like web survey as an example, if you see the uh, page 160, you'll notice that these Google Groups information which is gathered, it is very important for the uh, for the marketer. Also, in this case, the iPad, which is Apple iPad, which is used. Yes, I've gone through all of these steps, as I told you, on page 158, 156. These steps are there: research problem, research plan, then data collection, data analysis, and the distribution of the findings. Of course, like any other research, we have online research which has got advantages as well as disadvantages. There are advantages, that is number one, if you're gathering data online, it could be fast, it could be inexpensive. Survey may reduce the data entry errors, as I mentioned to you in the case of online surveys. Respondents may answer more honestly and openly. It has been noted that when you provide them the survey online, generally speaking, people respond it very honestly and openly because they are not in front of someone, they are not worried about, their privacy, etc. So, but it's got some disadvantages too. Disadvantages are sample representativeness, and as I mentioned to you previously, that maybe you can't be sure that who is on the other side filling the questionnaire. So, for example, if you were to gather information about maybe senior citizens and you don't want the teenagers to respond to those questions online, it would be very difficult to control that too. The validity of the measurement is questionable too, and the authenticity of the respondent is also in doubt at times. But even still, if you can avoid some of these disadvantages, there are a lot more advantages to online research, and this is one of the reasons why it is becoming very, very important tool for marketers to gather the data. Because we are seeing more and more people now using the internet, and that's why compared to previously now, the data which is being gathered online is much more refined. And as we move along, as more and more people become comfortable using the internet, they will be responding to quality questionnaires as well. Researchers are using online panels to combat sampling and the response problems as well. Other technology-enabled approaches which are specific to the internet are as follows, by which we can gather the data. One is called the client-side data collection. All of us are familiar with the cookies. These are the small software which are in the computer. And once we visit certain website, these cookies store that information in the background and then about the client. And then when you visit the other website, then they offer you other product and service based on the on your consumer behavior. So these cookies sometimes store the your passwords also. Uh, Although there has been a lot of criticism on those too, but these are still powerful means by which the data could be collected because this shows the marketers what kind of products or services this individual might be interested in. Use the PC meter with panel of users to track the user's click stream. Yes, there have been ways by which you can use the personal computer meter, which would track the click stream. In other words, which website first you visit based on that from where. So it would track exactly your trail, how you visit the website. The second one is the server side data collection. So we saw the client side, which is on the client computer, for example, or on the mobile phones, but this is on the server side. So that's on the customer side. This is on the supplier side. The server side data collection means are one is the data log software. So this software gathers the data about the individual visiting their website. This is also called WebStat, WEBSTAT, WebStat. WebStat gathers the data about the individual, how many web pages were visited, how often they were visited. This kind of software or information is also available to us as instructors when we are checking the students' visit to the website. So, for example, your attendance on the Moodle is checked by this data log software in which we gather this. This is called the server-side data collection that shows us what page you visited us, how often you visited us, what time did you visit, and so on and so forth. That's called the data log software. And then we can also check the real-time profiling track user movement through a website too. That could be real-time too. In other words, while you're doing that, that could be collected by the server-side data collection as well. So both of these are important based on the utilization, of course. They could be used as well. The third one, the technology-enabled software, is called the real space data collection. Offline data collection can be combined with the online data. And this is also important because this way the customers could, organizations could combine this data and see how they can fine tune their offers. One example which is being presented in the book is about the coupon for jam called Knott's Jam. And in this case, they're saying that they were offering a 50-cent coupon, but then their analysis showed that the customers were not responding much to that coupon, so they decided to increase the size of the coupon. Okay, so in this case, with the real space data, they were able to make some changes, and then the effectiveness of that advertising program went up. Transaction processing databases move data from other databases to the data warehouse. So now, once you have the data warehouse, as I told you previously, that stores like HomePlus, they're gathering thousands and thousands of transactions every day, and this data is going somewhere, and that is called the data warehouse. Now, this data warehouse may have some information which is very useful and other information which may not be very useful. So how do you then analyze that and find the right information which could be useful for you? And that is the one which is analyzed by what is called the data mining. The data mining tools are becoming very useful because it helps the marketeer to dig in from the data warehouse the right information and try to see how they can use that information to then make some decisions later on. One example which I may have given you in some other course also would be very relevant over here, and that is the example of data mining in the case of, for example, two products when you are trying to see a combination of purchase products at a certain time. So for example, if a store manager or a marketing manager feels that when people come into the store and they buy, for example, baby diapers, they also buy, not always, but most of the time, they also buy baby food as well. However, they are not too sure that how many times they come and buy, what percentage of the people when they come and buy baby diaper also buy baby food. So in order to find that out, they go to the data warehouse and they mine that data. In other words, use the data mining to get that information for example, for last 6 months as to the people who bought the data or who bought the baby diapers, they also bought the baby food or those or vice versa. In other words, when they came for baby food, they also bought the baby diapers. So then you get information on your computer, which is a graph which shows you what percentage of the time people, when they came in to buy one item, they also bought the other item. So once, if you see this relationship, supposing 60% of the time when they came in, they bought the baby diapers and baby food, and that shows you a very strong relationship. So now the question comes in, what do you do? How do you make the decision based on this information or the knowledge which you have gathered? Based on that knowledge, now you actually make some decisions. For example, One of the decision could be that you should put the products like baby food and diapers maybe closer to each other so that people don't have problems trying to go the other side of the store to buy that other product. So maybe the decision could be that let's make a small baby department in which we have the baby diapers and the baby food and other baby items. This will help the mom or the dad that when they are coming to buy one product, they will also buy the other product too, right? This is one implication. The other implication is that if you find out that 60% of the time when they buy the baby diapers, they also buy baby food, so then it doesn't make sense that you put both of those items on sale at the same time. You should be then putting one item on sale and not on the other at the same time. So in other words, if the diapers are on sale and you know that 60% of the time they will buy the baby food, so don't put the baby food on sale and vice versa. You see, there could be lots of other products like this, the combination. For example, Pepsi Cola and the chips. You cannot, there's a good correlation also. In the in the convenience store also, there's a good relationship between cigarettes and the lighter. Same way the donuts and the newspaper, you see. All this is gathered from data mining, and then based on that, marketers make some decisions. Then the customer profiling is also done based on that. What kind of customers are buying what kind of products? In other words, based on their loyalty card, you can find out what is the age group or what area these people are buying some products. This will help you how frequent they are buying the product. Now, if you find out, for example, that there are maybe 5,000 people in a store coming in and they're buying very frequently some product, for example, cat food, then in that case, if you are launching a new cat food, then it makes sense to send them a coupon to all of these people because they evidently have a cat and then you like them to buy the cat food. Reported generation, of course, is also come from the data mining, and in this case, you analyze the data and then you fine tune your products or services. Okay. This should take care of the information from this chapter. Please make sure to read the chapter carefully and also do the exercise which is asked, and then that should help you understand that chapter better. If you have any questions, feel free to write me on my email or come on my Skype. Thank you and have a good day.